Hi, everyone. I'm Moira Forbes, and welcome to The Takeaway. Joining me today is the legendary Carmelo Anthony. He's a leader and a pioneer on the basketball court, someone who's led a storied career as both a 10-time NBA All-Star, a 4-time Olympian. And as he enters his 19th season in the NBA, he'll be wearing the iconic purple and gold as the newest member of Laker Nation. But away from the court, which we'll hear more about today, Carmelo is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an extraordinary voice for social justice. He can also now add author to that job title, given his newly released memoir, which just came out yesterday, where Tomorrows Aren't Promised, a memoir of survival and hope, which will explore his journey today and some of the lessons learned. So Carmelo, first and foremost, congratulations. What, an incredible time for you right now.
Thank you. First of all, it's a beautiful time. It's a fun time. It's an exciting time. Just to have people, kind of talking to me about something different other than basketball. So those conversations always is intriguing.
Well, you gave us a lot to talk about and think about. And, I was really struck because your memoir is really candid and raw lens into your personal journey that so often was defined, especially as you were growing up, by constant racism, violence, lack of hope, extraordinary loss. And you share those experiences in a way that are both incredibly inspirational, but heartbreaking. How difficult was it for you to be as vulnerable as you were in the book, especially because you'd never previously shared so many of these stories?
It was very difficult at first, and then it just became easy because I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I felt it. If it was a battle between myself to write the book or to be vulnerable or not, I probably wouldn't have wrote it if I had to battle with myself. But I was at peace, honestly, writing this book and telling those stories and just being vulnerable and allowing people inside of a piece of my world and a piece of my life, like I've never done before.
How did you beat those extraordinary odds? You talk about these really harrowing stories of loss, the environment that you grew up around, and you talk about making it out and beating the odds. What strategies for survival did you use? How come you were able to emerge as such an exception given these really, really difficult circumstances?
Yeah, like I knew my circumstances. I knew my environment. I knew what I was dealing with. But we always dealing with the same thing. So we relied on each other to get each other out of whatever stresses, that we were dealing with. And again, I didn't look at it as growing up in a tough neighborhood or tough neighborhoods. I looked at it as life because this is what I knew every single day. That we did the same things, the same people, same areas. So this is life. I didn't look at it as, I hated it or, I'm better than somebody else or somebody is better than me because we're all on the same playing field. So we relied and we trusted, one another. And that's how really the bonds, was created back then. And it was something that we was looking forward to.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to read that you sort of never dreamed of going to the NBA, that your first love was baseball before you even made it into basketball, but that growing up, you didn't necessarily let yourself have dreams or expectations beyond, what was in front of you. When did you learn or how did you learn to find that hope? Or was there a turning point where, that lifted somewhat?
Well, I had to just be willing to take a chance, right? And when I say that I didn't have goals and dreams of making it to the NBA, it was just solely based off of numbers and statistically, like nobody. It was one out of every X amount of players that get drafted that come from where I come from. So I didn't want that. I didn't want to have to deal with that disappointment. And then as I got older, I liked basketball, but I didn't love it. I knew I was starting to really like it a lot more, but I didn't want something that would cause me and bring back that pain and that sense of loss because I've been dealing with it. I have something and I lose it. I have something and I lose it. So it was like everything that I kind of wrapped my arms around was being taken away from me. And me knowing that it was so hard from a statistic standpoint to make it out of that environment, I didn't want to hold on to basketball like that and then it be taken away from me when it came time to making a decision or going pro and going, like, I just didn't want that taken away from me.
How, if you have experienced this extraordinary loss where I think you put it so well, things are constantly getting taken away from you that you can't necessarily trust your dreams, given, the past experiences that you might have. What advice do you have for people in terms of who are in different circumstances, keep, moving forward, continuing to take those steps forward in spite of the fact that there are these really, really difficult sets of challenges that you may face?
Yeah, I condone that. I want you to, dream and have goals. You should dream and have goals. Like, I'm not saying that people shouldn't. I want everybody to be dreaming and thinking big and trying to win and trying to just figure their life out. And again, I'm speaking directly and solely from my perspective. This is my story. This is my perspective. And I think a lot of people will kind of take their own take from different stories and different revelations that I've talked about in the book. So I want you to dream big. I want you to, I dream big now. I have goals. I have goals now. And it's just when you are part of that environment and that community, it's hard to have goals. It's hard to have hope. It's hard to have dreams. It's hard to have dreams, but you should. I'm not telling you, that don't not have dreams. Don't have goals. We need something to look forward to. I just didn't have anything to look forward to in my situation. So that's why I'm bringing a lot of light to that, because I want people to understand it was my situation. Not everybody goes through the same situation.
You've built this extraordinary career, obviously from very, very difficult circumstances. You're going into your 19th season in the NBA. That requires incredible commitment and drive and this sort of relentless dedication to so much of what you've built and what you do now. How have you learned to maintain that drive, maintain that commitment? Because it's extreme. I would imagine it's incredibly intense.
It's intense. It takes a lot. It becomes your lifestyle, so it's second nature to you. My motivation is not going back to that, right? And understanding, especially now writing the book and writing the memoir and telling these stories, knowing what I truly had to deal with from a mental standpoint and from an emotional standpoint to where I'm at now. That's my motivation. That's why I really think the timing was right for me to tell that story, that part of my story, because that's my motivation. And for a lot of times, nobody really knew, or people would ask me, what's your motivation? I would say, I just, my son or my family, and this is that. But then as you start to write and you start to really put things on paper and really go through these stories, that's my motivation. Subconsciously, that's my motivation. And I don't want to ever feel that, have to experience that and feel that feeling again.
I would imagine that going through that process of reflecting back on your journey, it's, you talked about it as painful and therapeutic and, incredibly rewarding when you're able to do it in service of others with this book. What did you learn about yourself, taking that step back and reflecting back? Were there things that surprised you in terms of how you move forward or how you've evolved and grown in the work you do and the person you are?
Yes. I mean, the fact that I'm like, I call it taking the gloves off, right? And really allowing myself to be secure with being vulnerable, right? And being open to I've never done that before. I said, I speak on it in the book, that you couldn't be vulnerable. You couldn't show signs of weakness. And I know some people would say, okay, you 37 years old, you can't let that still be running your life right now. But it's not that I'm running my life. I just feel at peace in being vulnerable when it comes to telling that part of my story, because for so long I've kept that information. I kept those stories bogged in and only spoke about it to family and close friends and at gatherings and holidays. And now I'm allowing my fan base and others into that world, into my living room, into, my family dining room during holidays. These are where the stories will come up at.
What's been the biggest change for you now that you've had this sort of unlock of vulnerability, right? You put so much of it out there in a way that was very, very emotional, in a way that as you said, you had guarded for so many years. What's the biggest difference for you now in terms of opening your life in that way?
Well, we just don't know what we're holding on to until it either affects us in a way where it's really bad, or we start jotting these stories down and these thoughts down, and then you start realizing, like, I'm really holding on to a lot. I need to let some of this go. And I think after this process, I think this part of my life would be settled. This part of my life would be at ease. I don't have to hold on to, the stresses and the tension of that part of my life anymore. It's out there. People know it. It's like people know me better, more than I know myself now, because of, them feeling that they never gotten this information from me. If you was a fan of mine, you've never gotten this information from me. So now you definitely feel more connected with me as a man, as a father, as a friend, as a son. You feel more connected to me now.
I think it's an extraordinary, relationship to build with people, because I think when you can talk about those shared experiences, this connection and the ability to work together and to be able to, have impact is extraordinary when you have, that connection. In the book you write, quote, I go from these extremes of not caring to trying to prove everybody wrong. After all of your successes and accomplishments, people may be surprised that you felt you still had something to prove. Is that still the case after this book? And what is it that you feel like you may have had to prove to others?
Well, I do feel like that's the case. That's another factor of motivation, right? When you for so long been bet against, and been counted out, and you feel like no matter what you do is not enough for people. But then you can look at other people, and they don't have to work as hard as you have to work in order to make something happen. I had to get past that. I had to, teach myself how to get past that and learn that, to the point now I still feel like I have to prove something. I don't have to prove nothing, but I feel like I have to prove something because I'm still in it. I'm still a competitor. I still want to win. I still, want to see things done the right way in good shape and form and fashion. And when people don't understand that, that's what made me want to prove myself or to prove people wrong. But other than that, I do go from extremes of just whatever, like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to deal with it my way. I'll deal with it when I can, or I'm just going to let that water slide off my back until I get to the point where, like, damn, I got to prove myself again. Okay, let's go out there and do it. So I don't have an issue with doing it. I try not to do it as often or use that as an excuse as often, because in all actuality, I said it I won already. I won back in 2003 when I shook, David Stern's hand. So everything after that is a plus, is a positive for me.
You talk about so much sort of the white noise around you, and sort of any athlete or anyone in your position sort of lives in this spotlight, this vortex so often of criticism and narratives being about you, no matter what you do. And for all the work in the NBA's wins, losses, points scored, whatever it may be, people are always going to have something to say. How have you learned to deal with that criticism or that pressure of being in that spotlight and trying to maintain still that relentless focus that's so critical to your work as an athlete? Well,
when you know that it's twofold. When you know that it's just noise, right? It's not that easy to just say it's just white noise, just let it go. I mean, you really have to work on that. you really have to work on yourself and know who you are as a person in order to have, block that white noise out and just know it's there, but just block it out. That takes a lot of work. And I put a lot of work in over the years to get to that point where it's just, I hear it. It's just, it's nothing. It's like you said, it's white noise. It's just disturbing in the back. It's just little chatter in the back. So you really have to work hard on that. And I make that's a testament to how I grew up and what I had to go through and what I had to deal with in order to block out a lot of the negativity and the hardships that I had to go with and deal with.
One of the things I was really struck by in your memoir and just by your work over the years is that, so much of your legacy is, has the potential to be off the court. And you became an activist in a way that was so ahead of your time. And you've been one of the most outspoken players in the NBA for several years, making your voice heard for social justice and change, calling on others to get involved, especially fellow players to stand up for what they believe in, rather than sitting on the sidelines of justice. I'd be curious, how did you find your voice? When did you really understand both what that power was, but equally so, how to then tap into it and act on it?
Well, the times have changed, right? And younger coming into the NBA, it was no way that you could say anything. Like you would be ridiculed, you would be ousted, you would, like you couldn't speak on politics and religion. Those are two things that you had to stay away from. You couldn't speak on things that was going on, tragically in the streets. You had to really, and I don't want to use it, but you really had to shut up and dribble. Like you really had to. And I just think the times changed. I think the power of the people started to come back. People started realizing their power. Our community constantly continues to get damaged to, brutality, tragedy. Like it continues to have that. So there's only so much that one can take. That lid have to come off eventually, and people will have to listen. And it's unfortunate that it took several tragedies in our community, in our country, in our society, for people to kind of just wake up and just say enough is enough. And I think that's where it came from. But me personally, my dad was always that, and that was something that I never knew. He was a heavy revolutionary. He was, part of the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican Young Lords of the New York chapter. So these are things that these seeds was already planted in me. I just didn't know that I needed to water it or that the seeds were planted. So now I'm just, I've watered those seeds and I am who I am today. And there's no going backwards. I speak on the issues that I feel like I need to speak on. I only speak on things that I've been through. I only can speak on things that I've been through in my experiences. And we're going to continue having to speak out on a lot of different things. But I'm just happy to see that a lot of athletes in my position has taken control into their own hands and speaking up on issues that really need, awareness brought to it.
A lot of people have this opportunity to use their voice. You've talked about with these issues and, that our country is facing, that there's often been a lot of reaction, but not necessarily a lot of being proactive in terms of taking steps to drive change. What advice do you have for others in terms of what you've learned around how to effectively use your voice and how to think about influencing those around you to be a part of the change, which is something you've done in such a fundamental way in the NBA?
Well, you have to bring people along with you and not just, bringing them to travel. I'm saying like you have to bring people along emotionally and mentally and make people feel like they have a voice and like they do, there is hope and there is motivation and, there's upside to what we do. And if you can do that, if you can bring people along, then you're doing your job. And a lot of times it starts within your own community. It starts within your own family, with friends. If you can work with that, then you're doing your part. And I think everybody just have to do their part. We can't take on a whole entree. We gotta break this up. Somebody got to get the appetizers. Somebody got to get the dessert. Somebody got to get the drinks. It takes a village in order to make change. And I think that's what we're seeing now.
It definitely takes, I always tell my kids, teamwork makes the dream work, right? Like you have to be able to bring everyone together and be really thoughtful around the people, with the people around you in terms of how everyone can contribute in ways that are meaningful. Speaking of teaming up, switching gears, you're teaming up obviously this season with LeBron James, someone who you've been linked to in your earliest days in high school, and obviously coming out of the star-studded 2003 NBA draft class. As you enter your 19th season, as you play next to someone who has been tied to your career in a myriad of different ways, what do you think is one of the biggest things you've learned from LeBron, and what do you think he's taken away from you in terms of how you've not only navigated and grown as athletes, but really these cultural, really important cultural figures and forces of change?
I just think there's a different, forget basketball, there's a different level of respect that we have for each other as men. He's seen me go through damn near everything and still bounce back and stand tall and still stay true to who I am. I've seen him grow into this conglomerate that he is, right? And this cultural icon and this global icon. So we've seen each other grow in different paths. And my role was a lot different than his role, but there's always a level of respect that we will have for one another. And for that to come together now and for us to work together, it makes the process easier, because there's already a level of respect for each other as men, as people, as humans. So the basketball aspect should be easy because we already respect each other at a high level from a basketball standpoint. So now we just got to come and put that together and build what we trying to build. So it would be fun. It definitely would be fun. It's exciting. I'm sure it's exciting for everybody out there. It's exciting for us as players, because we the one who's controlling everything. Everybody's excited from the outside looking in based off of the narrative, but we're controlling that narrative. And if we don't go do our job, then we deserve everything that comes along with it. And we know it's not going to be easy, but we have to embrace this journey, and I think we will.
Two last questions for you as we wrap up. Something which I love that you brought up in this conversation is this sense of optimism amid huge, setbacks and challenges, turning those challenges and opportunities into opportunities. Your life, in a lot of ways, is a roadmap for others or someone to look to who may be facing similar sets of challenges, especially for young people. What do you say to others who may be struggling to find hope? What would be your words for them?
I just say, don't be afraid, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help, and take it from me, because I still hate asking for help. I've always been like that, and people will be like, no, just call somebody, talk to somebody. I'm like, nope. If I can't do it, it can't be done. So I just want, especially younger kids, or whoever it may be, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for somebody to lend their hand, and don't be afraid to rely on people and ask questions, and don't just act like you know everything, because we don't know everything. I've learned so much over these past year and a half, 2 years about myself writing this book that I'm like, forever, man, what was you thinking? Why were you like that? Why? Like you have to let that go. So I've learned that how to become, a little bit more secure, a lot more vulnerable, opening up conversations and not being afraid to talk about different things and not being afraid to face things, face on and address things as they come and just see things from a different perspective as opposed to having a negative outtake on everything. So I'm still a work in progress, and I'm 37 years old. So it takes a long time. And I kind of started a little bit late, but the younger generation have an opportunity to start now and start reaching out for help if you need it, start asking questions, start talking to people, allowing yourself to tap into the vulnerability side of who you are, and not be afraid to take chances and take risks.
I love that. And I think it's such important advice to give, because I think sometimes initially people think being vulnerable or asking for help are signs of weaknesses, but it actually it's a sign of strength.
I'm the first one to attest to that, because I've always been like, nope, I'm not. I can't. There's no way I can't. I don't like that feeling of being not in control of something. But it's the total opposite of that. When you are vulnerable, you are in control. So that's something that I really had to learn.
I love that. I think it's a lesson a lot of us still are grappling with. Last question for you, Carmelo. You know, this memoir and the conversation today, you really offer some extraordinary insights in terms of how people can think about opportunities and challenges in their own life. The show is called The Takeaway. When you look at your own life and obviously what you explored in the book, what's the one takeaway that you hope people walk away with? What's the moral of your story that you think is important, especially for right now, for people to understand or learn from?
I just think people live their lives on certain promises. Like, you know, even though tomorrows aren't promised, and that, you know, that's the title of the book, but I just think we all live our lives on certain promises. And I just want people to understand, like, you don't have to be from Baltimore. You don't have to be from New York. This has universal appeal. This is a universal message to everybody, because I'm sure everybody have that feeling and think about that. And, you know, tomorrows aren't promised, you know, and I know it sounds very cliche, but it's really not promise. And I'm telling you that from the belly of the beast and growing up where I grew up at and being from where I'm from. So that's just one experience. Everybody's experience is different, but they are dealing with a similar experience in their own situation. So tomorrows aren't promised. I can tell you that, but that doesn't have to be the mindset. You know, you have to get after it. You have to go. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in and trust in the people that's around you, that's going to give you good advice and guide you to just positive things and positive way of thinking. So that's what I want people to understand.
Well, congratulations. You know, this memoir is incredible, so inspirational. And I know a lot of people are going to connect with it, learn from it, and grow from it. And that's an extraordinary legacy that your own life, you can share it in a way that's in such service to others. That is a really extraordinary thing. So congratulations on the memoir. As I said, it was released yesterday. And we look forward to hearing more from you and watching what's ahead. So thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. Definitely.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday back here.